Some video game franchises are old, really old, like older than me old, and as the 1983 year on my birth certificate will tell you, that's old. However, despite their age, many video games have emerged as leaders in the media world. For whatever reason, be it their replayability, marketability, or passionate fan base, some games have found a way to stick around for more than 5 decades. In today's video, we're going to look at the 8 oldest video game franchises of all time. Now, I want to clarify that. I don't mean games that are rebooted once every decade. What I mean is a game that has seen at least one release every few years and has been released more recently than 2021. That continuous release factor left some games off of this list. Frogger? Gone. It had a 14-year gap between 1983 and 1997. The same is applied to Donkey Kong, which went dark for about a decade in the 80s and the 90s. The Galaxian Galaga series? No new releases since 2018. So, what series do qualify? Let's find out. Starting this list is a game that was much more popular when I was younger, but still around today, Bomberman. The first game, released in 1983, features a robot creatively named Bomberman. In the original game, your job is to place bombs one at a time to clear levels and kill bad guys. As you fight your way through a level, you unlock power-ups that give you the ability to place more bombs or increase the power of your bombs. Within each level, you will eventually unlock doors that will lead you to the next room, moving along until level 50, at which point you beat the game and become a full human. The game was originally developed in 1983 and was released as a computer game, although its origins actually date back to 1980 when it was released as a tech demo for Hudson Soft's Basic Computer. The game was released in Japan and Europe, but had to be renamed to Eric and the Floaters in Europe in order to avoid the use of the word bomb and the troubles that was plaguing Ireland. Also worth noting, the game was originally released as a prequel to Lode Runner, a Broderbund puzzle game released in 1983. The game made it over to the Famicom in 1985, where it was a hit, and then the Nintendo in 1989. It sold well, leading to Bomberman 2 in 1989. That game added a versus and battle mode where you try to kill your friends and they try to kill you. The game could actually support up to 4 players at a time, a relative rarity for Nintendo games. And, well, the series kept going from there, releasing various titles including Bomberman. Wait, that's the same name, different game, but whatever. Anyway, there was also a Bomber Boy, Super Bomberman, Mega Bomberman, Bomber Man. I know that sounds like an SNL parody, but that's actually real. By my count, there are over 60 different Bomberman games crossing dozens of platforms. The most recent game is Super Bomberman R2, which is available on all modern gaming platforms and the computer. This game comes with multiple modes, online play, and the ability to add your own stages. Few games have been more innovative, evolved in a more impressive direction over time, or been nearly as consistent as Microsoft Flight Simulator. This game first appeared on the market in 1982, where it was known as Microsoft Flight Simulator 1.0. The original game was birthed from a series of articles by Bruce Artwick, an engineer. In 1976, Artwick wrote a thesis about the ability of the 6800 microprocessor to create computer graphics that could realistically handle a flight simulator program. The next year, Artwick founded SCHLAUCHI, a software development company that was meant to sell computer games through the mail. Artwick programmed the original flight simulator and began to sell a different version of the program. That proved to be a big hit. In 81 or 82, Microsoft contacted SCHLAUCHI to develop a version of the game for the Microsoft PC. That version hit the market in November 1982. In the original game, players could only fly one plane, a Cessna 182, in 4 regions: New York, LA, Seattle, and Chicago, although there was actually a combat version that allowed players to simulate World War I combat. The game earned highly positive reviews and was like nothing else on the market at the time. It would sell about 800,000 copies in 5 years and pave the way for future releases. Between 1982 and 2006, a new version came out no less often than every 4 years. Releases got less frequent in 2006, and the series took an 8-year break before releasing a new version in 2014, then 2020, and most recently with Flight Simulator 2024. Over a dozen full versions of the game have been released. It goes without saying that new versions have updated graphics, features, and more. The game went from 4 airports to 24,000, from 1 plane to more than 125, from this to, well, this. You'd be hard-pressed to capture the evolution of graphics in video games in any game more than Flight Simulator. The most recent version of the game was released in November 2024. It unleashed a slew of new features, including new flight modes, environmental features, flight tracking, and more. Unfortunately, the game has also had a slew of problems, including overwhelmed servers at launch that stopped players from being able to, play the game. At one point, the amount of pilots playing the game dipped 60% from its all-time high mere days after launch. However, despite these challenges, sales of the series continue to be strong. As early as 1999, the series had sold more than 21 million units. At one point, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 had over 10 million pilots registered. And now for a complete, comprehensive list of Mario games. Yet, no, just kidding. I don't have 16 hours. Let's be real. If you know video games, you know Mario, and you know that discussing the Mario franchise in its entirety is well beyond what I have the time to do. So, let's talk about some of the highlights. Mario, as you may know, made his first appearance in Nintendo's Donkey Kong. He served as the protagonist in that game, which was originally supposed to be a Popeye game. Unfortunately, technical challenges, not licensing issues, as many, including me, honestly, have erroneously reported, prevented Nintendo from making the Popeye game, so instead they created a new IP that included Donkey Kong, Pauline, and Mario. Mario was designed to look this way out of programming concerns rather than purely aesthetics. Mario was given a red shirt with blue overalls to create contrasting colors that would make arm movements more easily visible. His hat was created to avoid the need to animate hair, and a mustache was created to obviate the need to animate his nose and mouth. Mario was named as such as a tribute to the landlord for Nintendo of America, Mario Segal. In the original game, Mario is a carpenter, reflecting the fact that the game takes place on a construction site. When Mario Brothers took the game underground, Mario's occupation was changed to a plumber, which stuck. What is a little less known is Mario's subsequent appearances. Mario Brothers wasn't the second video game appearance for Mario, or his third, fourth, or fifth appearance. In fact, it was his 22nd. You heard that right. Super Mario Bros. Wasn't even the first game on the Nintendo Entertainment System that Mario appeared in. Super Mario Bros. Wasn't even the first game on the Famicom that Mario appeared in. Before Super Mario Bros., Mario appeared in a ton of other games, including Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 2, 6 Game & Watch games, 4 Versus games, and a computer programming game called Family Basic. No, seriously. In total, Mario appears in over 300 video games, where he has worked in as many occupations as Homer Simpson. In these appearances, Mario has starred as a doctor, racer, golfer, and an Olympic athlete. If you include games where Mario is the star, and if you include the mobile game Super Mario Run, a somewhat controversial choice, Mario has appeared in 24 games. These are just the mainline games, running the gamut from Super Mario Bros. In 1985 to Super Mario Wonder in 2023. As of this video's creation, we don't have much more information about the new Switch, but it seems safe to say that Mario will lead his own adventure when the system makes its premiere later this year. Missile Command, released by Atari in 1980, was one of the better hits of the arcade era, selling 20,000 units at a time when warfare and the Cold War were on everyone's mind. Your job, as the player, is to defend your cities from a missile attack. You do so by firing your missiles from one of 3 counter-missile batteries. By the way, that Cold War stuff is real. So, the game was inspired by a radar screen, as seen by the head of Atari's coin-op division, Gene Lipkin. Lipkin assigned programmer Steve Colfie to come up with a game based on the radar screen, and Colfie was able to use junior programmer David Thurer, who said that the game was supposed to be, quote, showing missiles fired from the USSR toward the US, which is defended by the player, unquote. Later iterations of the game would intentionally tone down any political overtones and ensure that players never took any aggressive action. Between the trackball used to fire the missiles, the limited amount of ammunition the players had, and the heightening political tensions at the time, the game was a hit. It would be ported to the Atari in 1981, where a plot emerged that said the game took place between warring planets, Zardon, that's you, and Krytol. Clones of the game began to appear as well, coming out in the form of Missile Defense, Stratos, and Missile Control. New versions appeared on other platforms, including the Atari 8-bit computers, and even the Atari Lynx, which was Atari's effort to enter the handheld gaming world. The Atari ST, another Atari computer, had a version in 1987. The Game Boy had one in 1995. Then the Xbox. You get the idea. Each version, of course, added slightly new features. For example, new versions like the Game Boy had a 2-player mode. Each subsequent version made major tweaks to other features, like how long the explosions lasted. The most recent version of the game is Missile Command Recharged, which you can download for numerous platforms, including the Xbox, iOS, or on Steam. The graphics are obviously updated for modern times, and the game also comes with new power-ups, new modes, and new challenges. Heck, in 2011, there was even supposed to be a Missile Command movie. No word on what happened there, but what? You cannot discuss older franchises without discussing Pac-Man. The game essentially created the maze chase genre, gave birth to a legendary character that swamped 1980s pop culture, and, most importantly, opened up video games to a whole new audience. The game, invented by Toru Iwatani, was designed explicitly to bring new players into arcades. It wasn't a shooter or space-oriented game, and that made it different. different enough that it became a massive hit, with the original game selling more than 700,000 units for Namco. 1982 saw the publication of the first sequel, developed by General Computers Corporation. This company was founded by Doug McRae and Kevin Curran to update arcade games and make them more viable. That plan faced legal challenges, but McRae and Curran were able to convince Midway, who distributed Pac-Man in North America, to let them release a sequel. That turned into Mrs. Pac-Man, which refreshed gameplay and brought in more players. Now, was Miss Pac-Man the only Pac-Man game of 1982? It was not. There was also Pac-Man Plus, a barely refreshed version of the original game, as well as Super Pac-Man. That game was very different, and requires players to eat keys to unlock sections of the maze and get fruit. So, same concept, but pretty serious twist. 1983 saw the release of more Pac-Man games. Pac-and-Pal, Professor Pac-Man, and Junior Pac-Man. Junior Pac-Man takes the Pac-Man model, makes some tweaks, and introduces Pac-Man's kid. And from there, we're off to the races. Not including re-releases, there were a lot of Pac-Man games, over 40, and they did vary from the Maze Chase. You had Pac-Man 2, a slightly demented side-scroller-ish, sort of. There was also Pac-Man VR in 1996, which was released on the Virtuality arcade system. The game was basically Pac-Man, but with a first-person view, and required the player to actually turn their heads in order to move. Sounds nauseating. Later games continued this innovative trend. 2013 saw Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures, which was based on the Disney series with the character. This game is a platformer, but updated for a 3D environment. Now, my personal favorite of these was Pac-Man 99, released for the Switch in 2021, which is basically a battle royale version of Pac-Man. In the game, you clear stages and try to eliminate other players. It was truly innovative and a lot of fun, but unfortunately, the online version was shut down in 2023. The most recent Pac-Man game is, and it really is quite the name, Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle Chomp Chomps. The game was originally released for the Google Stadia, but when that system folded, Bandai Namco grabbed the game and released it for other systems. Like Pac-Man 99, the game is a battle royale in which up to 64 players can try to kill each other in one of the Pac-Man mazes. So, for those of you who want to play Pac-Man and a battle royale, you still have your chance. In the original version of Asteroids, you pilot this triangular ship where your goal is to use your thrust and weapons to stay alive as long as possible, shooting asteroids that break up upon contact with your lasers, forcing you to move quickly to avoid getting killed. As the game continues, you have to dodge asteroids that move faster, as well as UFOs. Many elements of the game, including the asteroids that broke up upon contact, the wraparound screen, and the use of a hyperspace button that could put you anywhere on the screen, were revolutionary. The addictive gameplay propelled this game to the top of the charts. It sold 100,000 arcade cabinets, making it the 7th best-selling arcade game of all time. Atari earned $150 million from sales, and it was the highest-grossing game of 1980. Its Atari 2600 version, released in 1981, sold 3.8 million copies and became the 6th best-selling game for the system. And from there, well, Asteroids just kept going. Lesser successful sequels soon followed. First, there was Asteroids Deluxe, released in 1981. This version introduced new and smarter enemies, as well as made a series of improvements to the graphics. Next up was Space Duel, released in 1982, which stuck with the 5-button control scheme while also introducing a force field shield. The game also introduced colors. Asteroids went dark for a few years before reappearing in 1987 as Blasteroids. Blasteroids marked the most significant shift to date for the game, switching from vector graphics to the standard raster graphics, and introducing a boss to the gameplay. The game also introduced an energy resource, which is used for fuel and shield and must be carefully managed throughout the game. Newer versions and updates continued every few years, with Atari jumping on the nostalgia train and releasing the game as part of multiple packages, such as 1994's Super Asteroids and Missile Command, which was released on the Lynx. 1995 saw the sale of Arcade Classic No. 1 for the Game Boy, and 2005 saw a Pong Asteroids Yar's Revenge package for the Game Boy Advance. Newer versions, including Asteroids Deluxe, Gunner Plus, and Outpost, also emerged for the PC. The most recent game is 2021's Asteroids Recharged. This version follows a tried-and-true formula. It takes the original gameplay and updates it, adding new graphics and sound, making modern tweaks to the gameplay, adding power-ups, challenges, and more. It is available on all major platforms. As of this writing, it has a very positive rating on Steam and is available for a mere $9.99, with sale prices dropping it to as low as $3.99. It is impossible to discuss the golden age of arcade games without discussing the granddaddy of all games, Space Invaders. This Taito classic, released in 1978, was designed by Tomohiro Nishikado, who was attempting to design a tweaked version of Atari's Breakout. Nishikado drew inspiration from a variety of sources, including Star Wars and War of the Worlds. The gameplay added a variety of new features, including enemies that reacted to you by firing back, a difficulty curve that made stages harder to complete as you progressed, and the ability to trigger a game over by being killed. The game's success was so massive that it was rumored to have caused a shortage of the 100 yen coin in Japan. It is the second best selling arcade game of all time in terms of units sold and grossed $670 million in 1978. By 1979, the game would make over a billion in the United States, and it's estimated to have generated nearly 4 billion by 1992. The success of the game made a sequel inevitable. Space Invaders Part 2, also released as Deluxe Space Invaders, came out the following year. That game uses similar mechanics but updates graphics to add color. Furthermore, some enemies will split into two upon being shot, and new UFOs are introduced. And then the game kept coming. There was Return of the Invaders in 1984, which makes major updates to the gameplay and graphics. The game went dark until Space Invaders 91, released in 1990, which adds new gameplay and graphics. More games kept coming for the arcade, all of which included new updates and modes. Space Invaders DX came with a parody mode, which allowed players to fight enemies from other classic Taito games, including Bubble Bobble. Space Invaders 95, Attack of the Lunar Loonies, all right, well, came with more parody versions, complete with deformed designs of enemies. Guess they were running out of material. Ports to home console systems and mobile versions kept coming as well, including releases on the 6th and 7th generation of systems, as well as various handheld units, including the Nintendo DS. New versions of the game have largely shifted to mobile devices, with the most recent entry being Space Invaders World Defense. This game, released by Taito and Google, incorporates augmented reality and allows players to fight off everyone's favorite aliens in the real world. It's a great spin on the classic series, and a credit to the continued creativity of the developers that the game continues to flourish. As of this video, there are around 30 total Space Invaders games. If you are my age, I bet good money that you remember playing Oregon Trail in school. For me, it was middle school, where I have the most distinct memories possible of playing the DOS version of this game in homeroom. Oregon Trail has become a game so powerful among certain generations, X and Millennial to be specific, that it has borne countless memes that last today. The game's history is actually really fascinating. It was designed in 1971 by Don Rawich, a college senior who taught an 8th grade history class. Rawich got two student teachers, Paul Dillenberger and Bill Beinenman, to help him create an interactive, text-based strategy game that was meant to help students learn about the Oregon Trail. The game allowed players to make a series of strategic decisions about traveling the trail, including how to spend money, manage negative events, purchase supplies, and more. In so doing, the three taught students about the trials and tribulations of the families that moved west and traveled the Oregon Trail. By the way, I should add, if you're interested in the history of the Oregon Trail game, I can't do it justice the way that the gaming historian can. Link in the description. Anyway, Oregon Trail was a huge hit and was ultimately purchased by the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium. The game was then published on Apple II computers and republished as Oregon Trail 2 in 1978 using some minimal graphics. Multiple more versions appeared over time with new partners and core gameplay elements added. The version that many of us are familiar with, and the creator of countless memes like writing poop on your tombstone or dying of dysentery, is the 1985 version. This version, developed by R. Philip Bucard and the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, was made available for the Apple II and DOS. In addition to the creation of distinctive graphics and the infamous hunting game, the game added real-world landmarks and NPCs for interaction and supply purchases. More than 24 versions of the game have appeared over time. The most recent version was developed by Gameloft and published by that company, as well as Apple for the iOS version. The game is available on all major platforms and Steam. It has also been released as a card game, and a movie version is apparently in the works from Apple Studios, with the company announcing in October 2024 that they had acquired the rights to the film. Not bad for a game that most of us just played to kill a few minutes in homeroom. In an era where attention is the most valuable, limited, and in-demand resource, the fact that these games have remained so popular is an incredible testament. Lasting more than a couple of sequels is a feat for any video game, but to last decades, and in some cases to hit middle ages, is astounding. It is a credit to these games, as well as their developers, publishers, and fans, that so many of these games have lasted so long. And that is it for this edition of Almost Something, and as always, I really hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button for more gaming content, or please click on the next video that the almighty YouTube algorithm has served up for you. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Have a wonderful day out there, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I liked making it.